Okay, for the last half of section 6.3, they really focus on sine, cosine, and tangent graphs. So they're going to ask you a lot of questions about these graphs. So I want to make sure that you know how you can graph a graph like this. Towards the end of the lesson, it will ask you to graph, sometimes they'll ask you to graph something like, maybe this is the sine of x plus 2. Well, in that case, you could just plug these x values in to sine, calculate that, and then add 2, and then come up with your xy table. I always rely on an xy table. So when in doubt, make a table. My table, they wanted me to have a domain range or domain of negative 2 pi all the way up to 2 pi. So what I did was just focused on the positive values, so just from 0 up to 2 pi, because I know that these are going to repeat in the opposite direction. So sine and cosine and tangent graphs, they are repeated functions. So sometimes they call those a periodic function. So they are consistent. It just repeats the same pattern over and over again. So you'll see what pattern I'm talking about. So I just went through, like on my unit circle, I went through by fourths. So if you remember back to your unit circle, I started at 0 and I counted by fourths. So I did pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, pi, and so on. So I just did one round around the circle, and then I'll look at the negative side when I'm done with that. Okay, so starting out, don't forget that sine is your y values. So when I'm looking at my unit circle, I'm asking, what is the sine of 0? So if I look back over here at 0, what is sine? It is 0, because it is my y value. So this is 0. Then what is the sine of pi over 4? If I go to pi over 4, it's square root of 2 over 2. What you could also do is use a calculator here. If you're not sure about this and you don't have a unit circle right in front of you, sometimes even if you're able to fill this in because you have it memorized, sometimes it's really difficult to picture it without it in front of you. So maybe using a calculator would just be faster, and that is fine. The other thing you may want to do is simplify this, because square root of 2 over 2 on a graph, like how am I going to graph that, right? That is about 0.7, so I'm just approximating that. And then when I go to graph it, that'll make more sense. All right, pi over 2, I'm going to do the same thing. So pi over 2, the y value is 1. 3 pi over 4, right here, square root of 2 over 2 again. Okay, so then instead of switching back and forth, I'm just going to tell you these values, but that's where I'm getting them from, the unit circle. So this would be 0. This one would be a negative square root of 2 over 2, which is negative 0.7, about. 3 pi over 2 is negative 1. 7 pi over 4 is the square root of 2 over 2, negative again, so about negative 0.7. And then 2 pi is 0. Okay, so then if I graph these, let's look and see what they look like. So 0, 0 is my first point. And then I'm going to skip down to this one. At pi over 2, which is right here, it's at 1. So on my graph, you can kind of see what I did. I just did halves because I would run out of space if I would have spaced it that far. But in between here, this is pi over 4. This is 3 pi over 4, and so on, right? So I have all of these values. I just didn't label all of them because I would have run out of room. Okay, so in between there, at pi over 4, right here, I have that square root of 2 over 2, or 0.7. So this right here would be a half, so this would be 3/4, so 0.75. So 0.7 would be just below that, maybe around in there. And then at the next one, that 3 pi over 4, I have that same value. So I'm just going to put it at the same place. I'm going to approximate it right there. And then at pi, I'm at 0, so that means right here. And then at this one, I'm at negative 0.7. So again, if I go down, this would be half, this would be 3/4 of the way, so 0.7 would be about right there. And then at 3 pi over 2, I'm at negative 1. And then right here, I'm at that same spot again. and then at 2 pi I'm at 0. So you can kind of see where this pattern is going. So this is what my graph ends up looking like. It's a nice curve. So it curves upward, and then it comes back down. This is terrible. Hold on a second. Let me fix that. Okay, comes back down, and then it goes ahead down into the negatives, and then it comes back up. So that's my sine curve. Now, if I'm going the opposite direction, it's going to follow the same curve. So if it was up here, it's going to come down to this direction and then back up that direction. So down here, if I was headed downward through 0, I would be going down to first 0.7, so negative 0.7 right here, then to negative 1. Then I would go back up to negative 0.7, then I would go back up to 0. Then I would go to positive 0.7. Then I would go to positive 1, then positive 0.7, then 0. So then I've got this half of my graph. So that's what my sine curve looks like. Cosine is pretty similar to that. So when I look down at this one, my table, I did the same thing. I said I'm going to count by fourths. So 0, pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, which is the same thing as pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, and so on. So when I look at my cosine, if I'm graphing cosine, my cosine is my x values. So at 0, my x value is 1. I'm sorry, my y value. What am I? Yeah, my x value. I'm sorry. Okay, so 0, 1 is the point. This is really confusing because this is 1, 0. I got to get my head on straight here. So cosine is your y value or your x values, which means when I write my y value down, I'm actually writing down the x values in my points on my unit circle. That's confusing. All right, so then when I go to pi over 4, which is right here, that x value is the square root of 2 over 2. Which we know is about 0.7. Again, so I'm just going to stick with that same approximation. At pi over 2, it's 0. At 3 pi over 4, that one is actually negative square root of 2 over 2. So negative 0.7. At pi, it's negative 1. 5 pi over 4 is negative square root of 2 over 2 again, which is about negative 0.7. 3 pi over 2 is 0. 7 pi over 4 is square root of 2 over 2. And then at 2 pi, it's 1. Okay, so when I go to fill this in my graph, then I've got a 0, 1. So at 0 this time, it's up here at 1. But if you look, my values kind of do the same thing. I still have these 0.7s and these 1s and these 0s. So what's going to happen is I have this exact same curve, this same idea. It's just at a different spot. It's almost like this has been shifted over to where the peak of my curve is at an x value of 0. It starts there. So this is kind of shifted over. So then this one went down to my 0.7. And then it went down to 0. And then it went down to negative 0.7. And then negative 1, and then back up to negative 0.7. So it kind of makes sense now why this happened right here. And then a 0, and then a 0.7, back up here, and then a 1. So this one, it's almost like it's like halfway through the curve. I don't know why I said it almost is. It is halfway through the curve there, and then it's going to come back down this direction. So right here would be my 0.7, and then my 0, and then my negative 0.7, and then my negative 1, negative 0.7 again, and then 0, and then positive 0.7 right here, and then 1. So again, it follows this pattern, goes down, back up. Okay, so there's my sine and my cosine curves. And then what happens with tangent? This one is interesting. So tangent, remember tangent is y over x. So sine over cosine, or y over x. So when I go to fill this table out, I'm looking at these values and saying I'm going to take y over x, y over x, y over x, right? So in this first one, y over x would be 0 over 1. So 0 over 1, which is just 0. 0 divided by 1 is 0, if 0 is on top. At pi over 4, this one is kind of nice because it's square root of 2 over 2 over square root of 2 over 2. So if I really wanted to write this out, it would look like this. Square root of 2 over 2 over square root of 2 over 2. But really, that's just 1. I'm saying take the same thing divided by itself. So that's just 1. The next one is the weird one. This one I get 1 over 0. 1 over 0 is undefined. So what does that tell me? That tells me that at pi over 2, which is right here, I have a vertical asymptote. Like that. Okay, and then that's going to happen a couple more spots as well, but let's just keep going. So 3 pi over 4. At 3 pi over 4, my y over my x is going to give me a -1 if I simplify that. And then at pi, I'm going to have 0 over -1. 0 over -1 is the same thing as just 0. The next one, 5 pi over 4, ends up a +1 again. 3 pi over 2, this one ends up a -1 over 0, which again is undefined. So at 7 pi over 4, so right here's 3 pi over 2. That's 6 pi over 4, right? So then this would be 7 pi over 4. So right here I had another vertical asymptote. Okay, and then when I don't know why I did that, I'm sorry. Let me go back. I was looking at 7 pi over 4. That was actually at 3 pi over 2. Let me scoot that back over. So this undefined was at 3 pi over 2, not 7 pi over 4. So I'll move it back over where it should be. That's better. Okay, and then at 7 pi over 4, I end up with a -1 like I did up here on this one. And then at 2 pi, I end up with 0. It's 0 over 1 again, which is just 0. Or the same as this one. Okay, so here's what's going to happen then. So it looks like I've got 0, 0. And then I've got pi over 4, 1, which is right here. Then I have this undefined, so I'm just going to leave that alone for a second. Then I have 3 pi over 4, which is right here at -1. And then I've got 0. And then I've got 1 again. Right? And then I've got this undefined. And then I have -1 again. And then 0. And if I had to guess, I would say this one would be at 1. So it almost looks like I have these like straight lines going like this. But we know that can't happen because this is an asymptote right here. So it would have to curve down that direction. So what that looks like is this. This is an asymptote this way. And then I'm curving it too quickly there. So it goes like this. And then it goes back down this way. So I have this funky curve going on here. So this one goes down this way, where it goes like that. This one goes up this direction, which means this way it's going to go down this direction, right? So again, this was 1. That means this one is at -1. So this one's going down this way. So what do you think is happening right here at -pi over 2? An asymptote. So right here is an asymptote. Same thing with -3 pi over 2. There's an asymptote right there. Okay, and then again, right here, I've got one at 1, one at 0, one at -1. Where's my -1? There it is. So again, this is going up this way. This one's going down this way. That was really curvy. should not be that curvy. And then same thing here. Now this one just asked me to go from -2 up to +2. So again, if I'm looking from this direction, this is 0. This one was at 1. So at 1, so this one was going up this way. And then I don't have to draw that last half. So there is your tangent curve. I wish I made those look a little bit prettier. You can look in your book, they do a better job of it. But this gives you a good idea of what they're asking. They're gonna ask you a lot of questions about these 3 graphs, so you can come back and reference this video and it'll make it a little easier.